A leaked DNA report reveals Meghan Markle's child's father isn't Prince Harry. What follows unravels a royal scandal no one was ready for. Whose name is this? Harry's voice cracked, the manila folder trembling in his hands. The silence in the room was suffocating, thick like the velvet drapes drawn shut against the London drizzle. Meghan sat on the edge of the antique armchair in Kensington's private wing. Her hands clenched so tightly the blood had vanished from her knuckles. Across from her, Harry stood frozen, the report open in his shaking grasp, his knuckles whitening as his eyes traced the lines he had read 10 times already, hoping, praying, they would somehow change. They hadn't. The name listed under paternal match. Inconclusive. Strong non-match detected individual ID. Redacted wasn't his. It was someone else's. A name he hadn't heard in years but which now rang like a gunshot in a cathedral. Outside, rain lashed against the stained glass windows, wind groaning like a warning. Inside, Meghan finally stood, slowly, like something inside her had cracked and could no longer hold its shape. Her eyes glistened, but not with guilt. Harry noticed that instantly. There was something else. Fear, perhaps, or a secret too large to carry alone. "You were never supposed to see that," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the ticking of the wall clock. It was 2:37 a.m. Harry's breath hitched, and his voice came out as a rasp. "Was I never supposed to know? Or was no one?" Meghan closed her eyes. "I needed time. Everything changed after Montecito. You know that." "I thought I knew everything," he said. There was a sharp knock. 3 times. Then silence. They both turned, Meghan's body instinctively shielding the ornate cradle near the fireplace. Archie was asleep, unaware that the quiet world around him was on the verge of collapse. Harry crossed to the door and opened it. Standing there, in a tailored gray suit and with an envelope in hand, was James Rathbone, the palace's crisis handler. His face, carved from stone, betrayed nothing but urgency. "Your Highness," he said, his eyes flickering to Meghan with calculated hesitation. "I'm afraid this matter is no longer private." The words fell like ice. Harry stepped aside without a word. Meghan didn't move. Her feet might as well have been roots. James placed the sealed envelope on the table with a pair of gloves. The wax seal bore the royal crest, untampered. "This is the unredacted version," James said, his voice low. "The Queen received it first. She wants you at Sandringham by morning." Harry looked from the envelope to Meghan. "Does she know?" he asked. Meghan's lips parted, then closed again. "No," she finally said, "but she will. And that's not the worst part." James cleared his throat. "It gets worse." That's when the second folder slid from under his jacket. Black. He didn't place it on the table. He held it as though it were a live wire. "We ran a follow-up test, independently, to eliminate tampering. It wasn't leaked from inside the palace." Harry narrowed his eyes. "Then from where?" James hesitated. "From California. Someone in the States has access to the same sample. And they've sent it to the press." Meghan gasped, stumbling back like she'd been struck. "The Guardian has it," James continued. "But worse, so does the Mirror. And there's a countdown timer on a website that went live 2 hours ago." Harry's jaw clenched. "What kind of timer?" 5 days. Then full disclosure. The folder was placed on the table with care. Harry didn't open it. Not yet. He looked to Meghan, whose legs finally gave way as she collapsed into the chair, trembling. "Tell me who he is," Harry said. His voice was soft. Too soft. Meghan looked up. Her eyes were flooded, but she held his gaze. "I don't know any more," she said. The room fell into a graveyard silence. James straightened his tie. "There's a name, and it's not just anyone. This man, he used to work in royal security. He was part of your team during the South Africa tour." Harry blinked. His mind was already racing. The name, that name, Dylan Hawthorne, ex-military, top clearance. Transferred from MI5 to work under the special protection group assigned to Meghan during that turbulent year when threats were high and media pressure higher. Harry's hands balled into fists at his sides. He's been gone for years. James didn't blink. Not entirely. He's resurfaced. Someone paid for his lawyer. Harry's stomach dropped. And now he wants paternity rights, James finished. Or at least attention. The air turned toxic. From the cradle, Archie stirred, his little fingers twitching beneath the blanket. Meghan stood, reaching for the child, clutching him to her chest like she could still protect something. They'll never take him from me. Harry turned away from her, unable to speak. Outside, the storm howled louder. Inside, a family stood on the edge of something much worse than scandal. Something that could rewrite their bloodline. Forever. You said it was over, Harry snapped, his voice rising until it scraped against the high ceiling of the drawing room like a sword against glass. You looked me in the eye after the South Africa tour and said there was never anything, never anyone. You made me feel insane for asking. Meghan stood barefoot on the cold marble floor, Archie clutched tightly against her chest, his small body pressing into her like a shield. Her eyes were wide but unflinching, lips quivering but refusing to tremble into surrender. I told you what I believe to be true, she replied, her voice taut, trembling with the effort to stay composed. And if you had given me the space to tell you now instead of finding out from that bloody folder, from a test I didn't even ask for? He cut her off. You know I never would have done it. I never would have doubted you like that. But someone did, Meghan whispered. And they made sure you found out before I could say anything. James Rathbone stood near the door, as still and cold as the brass umbrella stand beside him. His presence was both a reminder of how official this had become, and a warning. Nothing from this moment forward could be undone. Harry turned away from Meghan and began pacing, like a lion that had been caged too long. His eyes darted toward the window. Paparazzi hadn't swarmed yet. But that wouldn't last. Not with the kind of digital clock counting down somewhere on the internet, each second bringing them closer to public dissection. You loved him, he said suddenly. Meghan's breath caught. Her grip on Archie tightened. I didn't say that, she replied. But you didn't say no. I was alone. I was isolated. You were away in London half the time, being pulled into meetings with your father, with Parliament. Every headline was a death sentence. I had no one. You had me. No, Harry, Meghan's voice cracked. I had a ghost of you. A man who couldn't decide if he wanted to be a prince or a husband. I cried myself to sleep most nights while you tried to please a family that never wanted me there in the first place. Harry stopped walking. The stillness returned like fog, oppressive and wet. I risked everything for you, he said. I gave up my role, my country, my name. And I gave up my safety, my peace, my identity. She yelled back. Archie stirred and whimpered in her arms. I had threats pinned to my baby bump, she continued, now more quietly. And you were in briefings. Harry clenched his fists. Don't turn this on me. There's nothing to turn, she whispered. You asked if I loved Dylan. I didn't. But there were nights when I needed someone to remind me I existed. And he did that. Harry looked at her like she'd struck him. Did you sleep with him? Silence. Then, yes. The word cracked the room like thunder. James shifted near the door, his mouth parting slightly as if he hadn't expected it to be said so plainly. Harry pressed his hand to his face. Was it once? A pause. A breath. Twice. His body tensed. Twice. Meghan's voice became defensive. He left after that. He requested reassignment. I never saw him again. Harry lowered his hand and stared at her. Until now. No, she said. I haven't spoken to him. I swear. James interrupted for the first time. That's partially true. There's no direct communication between your number and his, nor on any of the official palace lines. But there were encrypted texts sent to a burner phone we traced to Malibu. The messages stopped after a year. Meghan's jaw clenched. That wasn't me. Harry stared. Then who was it? She didn't answer. You gave birth to a child and never once wondered if he was mine? Harry asked, voice raw. I told myself he was. I needed him to be. Harry laughed bitterly. So did I. Suddenly, the room felt too small. He stormed out, brushing past James, and slammed the door behind him. Meghan flinched. Archie started to cry. The thunder outside echoed Harry's steps down the hallway. James didn't move. Do you believe me? Meghan asked softly, not looking at him. I believe you're under siege, he replied. And the only way to survive is to tell the truth now. Every part of it. She turned slowly toward him. You think I'm lying? I think you're hiding something even worse than the affair. Meghan didn't deny it. She walked to the crib, gently placed Archie inside, and smoothed his curls with trembling fingers. Then she said, he was warned. Who? Dylan. After the second time, someone found out. He came to me days later and told me he was being reassigned. Said it came from upstairs. Not just the palace. Higher. You mean MI5? Meghan nodded. Or someone who has power over them. He said if he didn't disappear, the next step would be worse. James narrowed his eyes. So you think someone inside the royal infrastructure knew about the affair and buried it? Meghan turned. What if they didn't just bury it? The implication hung heavy between them. Harry's not the only one who's been lied to, she whispered. I might have been lied to too. James stepped closer. You think this baby, Archie, was manipulated? I think someone tampered with the test, she said. I think the truth isn't about Harry or Dylan. It's about why this is happening now. James's jaw tightened. From outside, a new sound cut through the storm, the dull thrum of helicopter blades. James turned to the window. A royal security chopper hovered just above the treetops, searchlights scanning the estate. They're here already, he murmured. Meghan picked up her phone. Messages were flooding in. The countdown website had updated again. A new headline blinked at the top. Archie's real father T.O. speak out. Live in 72 hours. She turned the screen toward James. His face paled. Harry re-entered the room like a storm, his shirt drenched from the rain. Prepare a statement, he said coldly. I want it released in 3 hours. James looked at him. Saying what? That I knew. That we're prepared. And that no matter what they publish, my son will not be a pawn in their circus. James hesitated. Are you sure you want to say that? Harry's voice was stone. I am. But it might not be true, Meghan whispered. Harry stared at her. He's still my son. And for the first time that night, Meghan broke. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. The tears years in the making. The rain outside turned violent. A flash of lightning illuminated the entire room. I'm sorry, she choked. I never wanted to destroy you. Harry walked over slowly and dropped to his knees in front of her. You didn't destroy me, he said softly. You just broke my heart. The sound of Harry's voice echoing off the walls of Kensington's war room was unlike anything that had ever been heard within those centuries-old halls. I don't give a damn what Buckingham says, he shouted, pacing in front of a table littered with briefings, security updates, and printed tweets that looked like they were about to combust from the sheer tension in the air. They sat on this for years, let this rot beneath our feet like a bloody landmine. And now it's blowing up and they want to contain the narrative? They can rot. Standing in the corner, James Rathbone adjusted his earpiece. His jaw was tight, his voice clipped. Sir, Dylan Hawthorne has confirmed a live appearance at midnight, Pacific time. That gives us just under 11 hours. And yes, he's going to mention Archie. Mention him? Harry barked. He's going to publicly claim my son. On a live stream, with millions watching. Across the room, Meghan stood still. She hadn't spoken since entering the chamber. Her arms were crossed over her chest, face unreadable, lips pressed into a line so thin it was nearly invisible. But her eyes told another story, one James had seen before, in wartime briefings and during interrogations. Someone trapped in a reality where no answer could fix what was coming. Is it true he's being backed by Netflix? Meghan asked suddenly, her voice ice. James nodded grimly. And he's not doing it from a studio. He's in Johannesburg. There's a live crowd. A very emotional one. It's being branded as a reconciliation talk. A story of redemption. They're marketing him as the father who lost everything to the crown. Harry snorted bitterly. Of course they are. A soldier, a scapegoat, a seduced bodyguard. They're going to turn him into a saint. And me into a seductress, Meghan added softly. A manipulator who used her power to destroy two men. Harry turned and their eyes locked. Did you? The silence that followed wasn't just tension, it was suffocating. No, she said, with the weariness of 1,000 nights without sleep. But no one watching tonight will believe that. Harry looked away. They're going to take him from me. I can feel it. No, Meghan said, her voice suddenly steely. They can't. Not unless we break down ourselves. There was a pause. Then Harry turned to James. I want to speak. Before Dylan. Go public. James blinked. Are you sure? No, Harry said. But it's the only way to steal his momentum. If I speak first, if I show strength, transparency, heartbreak, they'll hesitate. Meghan exhaled. We need to control the story, not bury it. James rubbed his temples. I can get you a platform. Now TV will take the exclusive. But Harry, it has to be raw. If you lie, even a little, they'll tear you apart. I'm not going to lie, Harry said. I'm going to bleed. By evening, the world was already on fire. Hashtag Archie's father trended globally. Social feeds were flooded with split-screen comparisons of Archie's eyes, nose, and jawline beside Dylan's and Harry's. There were conspiracy threads digging into old photos from the South Africa tour. Shots of Meghan standing close to Dylan. One where he held an umbrella for her. Another where she laughed and touched his arm. It was damning in the court of public opinion. And then the photo leaked. An unverified, but emotionally devastating image surfaced online, showing Meghan seated beside Dylan on a leather couch, head resting momentarily on his shoulder. The room was dim, the walls decorated with campaign posters from her charity events. Dylan was looking straight ahead, serious, almost sad. Meghan's face was half-shadowed, her hand near his. It was blurry, unconfirmed, possibly altered. But it was enough. That's the one, Harry said, eyes glued to the screen. That's the moment everything changes. Do you remember that night? Meghan asked. I remember every night I wasn't with you, he muttered. James appeared with his phone. Now TV confirmed. They'll go live in 20 minutes. They're prepping the studio now. You'll have full editorial control, but you can't pre-record. They want this to feel real. It is real, Harry said. He turned to Meghan, who walked closer. The tension between them was now something else, beyond anger, beyond betrayal. It was a shared desperation. Two people drowning in the same tide, clinging to whatever remained. You don't have to do this alone, she said quietly. Harry looked into her eyes, and for the first time in hours, the wall cracked. Stand beside me, he said. Meghan nodded. The studio lights were blinding. The host, a composed woman named Rachel Kinney, gave them a tight smile as she adjusted her mic. No introductions, Harry told her. No preamble. You want to speak directly? I want to look into that lens and let the world see what this is doing to me. Rachel nodded and stepped aside. A hush fell. Harry and Meghan sat side by side. The seconds ticked down. 3, 2, 1. We are live. Harry looked straight into the camera. My name is Prince Harry, he began, voice thick. And tonight, I'm not speaking as a royal. I'm not speaking as a public figure. I'm speaking as a father. Meghan reached out under the table and lightly touched his knee. There is a story spiraling through the world tonight, Harry continued, that claims my son, our son Archie, is not mine, that the father is a man I once trusted, a man who served beside me, who protected my wife during a time of great uncertainty. His voice broke slightly. He inhaled sharply. I have seen the test. I have read the name. And yes, the results do not match my DNA. A silence so vast followed that even Rachel flinched behind the monitor. But facts, Harry said, do not always equal truth. I don't know how this came to be. I don't know if the tests were tampered with, or if there's something far deeper at play. Some orchestration we haven't yet understood. Meghan stared at him, stunned. But here is what I do know, Harry said, his voice rising with emotion. I held Archie before the cord was even cut. I watched him take his first breath. I walked the halls of that Toronto hospital praying he'd open his eyes and see me first. I have been there for every fall, every night terror, every storybook. He calls me Daddy, and I will die before I let the world rewrite that. Meghan's breath hitched. I am not perfect, Harry continued. I have been angry. I have been distant. I've made mistakes. But I will never, never abandon my child. The screen cut to Meghan. There was a moment, she said quietly, when I thought I had lost myself, when I felt unloved, unheard, unsafe. I made a choice. I regretted it. But that choice did not define the love I carry. It never defined Archie's future. The host gave the cue. They were running out of time. Harry leaned forward. I will meet Dylan's broadcast with one truth, he said. No man claims my son without meeting the father he's had from day one. If Dylan wants the world to believe he deserves to be in Archie's life, he'll have to explain why he left. The feed ended. In less than 10 minutes, it had gone viral. Across the world, in a dim-lit stage in Johannesburg, Dylan Hawthorne sat quietly in front of a crowd of journalists, activists, and war veterans. He had not seen the interview yet. He held a letter in his hand. A letter signed by Meghan, dated 6 years ago, unseen by anyone. He opened it slowly, trembling. Then, into the mic, he whispered, She begged me to disappear. Not for Harry, but for Archie. And the world gasped again. You knew, Harry said quietly, almost too quietly. Didn't you? King Charles didn't look up immediately. He continued stirring his tea with a slow, deliberate motion. The clink of silver on china echoing in the vast, echoless drawing room of Sandringham. Through the tall bay windows, the dawn broke over the cold Norfolk estate, its fog rolling like smoke from a battlefield. I knew enough, the king replied at last. Enough to recognize that silence, at times, is the more dignified choice. Harry's eyes narrowed. You let me walk into the fire. You let the entire world believe this was the first time I saw the test. And you knew. Charles set the spoon down with finality and looked up, his expression as unreadable as the portraits lining the ancestral walls. What would you have had me do? Stop you from marrying her? Publicly demand a paternity test before the child was born? This is not the Jeremy Kyle show, Harry. This is the British monarchy. No, Harry said bitterly. It's your monarchy. And one day it might have been yours. I don't want it, Harry snapped. Not if this is what it takes to keep it standing. Charles's face twitched slightly, just around the eyes. So you admit it then, Harry said, stepping closer, voice shaking. You knew there was doubt, and you let us carry on. You let me raise a son that might not even be mine, without so much as a word. He is your son, Charles said, voice firm now. In all the ways that matter. Don't let this world, or your anger, take that from you. Harry laughed, short and cruel. Don't talk to me about being a father. Charles stood then, suddenly, and it was like the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. I have made my mistakes, Harry. Many. But don't you dare presume I enjoyed any of this. I lost my daughter-in-law the moment she crossed the Atlantic. I lost you when you followed her. And now the very fabric of our family is being pulled apart in front of the globe like some sort of grotesque theater. You could have stopped it. I tried, Charles snapped. You didn't listen. You married her. Harry's eyes burned. Because I loved her. And love, Charles said slowly, has never been enough in this family. The words fell like stones. Before Harry could respond, a knock came at the heavy oak door. It opened only an inch before Camilla's voice pierced through. They've called an emergency session at the Privy Council, she said. You're expected in 45 minutes. All three of you. Harry turned to her. All three. She hesitated. You, Meghan, and Dylan Hawthorne. It was the first time in nearly 6 years that Meghan had stood in the long, echoing corridor of Buckingham Palace. The walls whispered. Her heels clicked against the polished floors, each step bouncing back at her like a challenge. Every tapestry, every coat of arms, every stare from every royal advisor lining the sides felt like a dagger between her shoulder blades. She held her head high. Archie wasn't with them. James had whisked him away to a secure estate on the outskirts of Windsor, shielded from press and pressure. But even that had caused a stir. Harry walked beside her in silence. He had barely spoken since leaving Sandringham. His eyes were dark, expression unreadable. Meghan couldn't tell if he was angry, numb, or simply empty. They entered the Privy Council chamber together. Already seated were Queen Camilla, Princess and Prince William, and several high-ranking advisors. And at the far end of the long mahogany table sat Dylan Hawthorne. He wore a tailored suit. His hair was shorter than Meghan remembered. His eyes, hazel, stormy, met hers without flinching. He stood. "Your Majesty, Your Highnesses," he said with a slight nod. Harry sat first, then Meghan. There was a long silence. It was William who broke it. "This is an unprecedented situation," he said. "A member of our former security detail has alleged paternity of a royal child, a claim supported by DNA evidence. Meanwhile, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have responded publicly, and the monarchy is now at a tipping point. Let's not pretend this is about allegations," Harry said coldly. He went live. He held up a letter with her signature. He made it personal. Dylan's voice was even. "Because it was." Meghan's eyes snapped to him. "You want to be in my son's life now?" she asked. "After all these years?" "I wanted to be in it from the beginning," Dylan said. "But I was forced out." "By whom?" Harry asked. Dylan didn't blink. "Ask your father." All eyes turned to King Charles. He didn't deny it. "I issued the transfer," Charles said, "after discovering certain intimacies. It was the only way to avoid scandal." "So you erased him," Meghan said. "Like a mistake." "I protected you," Charles replied. "No," she said. "You protected yourself." Dylan pulled the letter from his pocket. "This is real," he said. "It's not altered. Dated 2 months before I left. She begged me to go. Said it wasn't safe for me if I stayed. That if anyone found out." "I was scared," Meghan interrupted, voice cracking. "I didn't know what would happen to me. To him. To my baby. They were already trying to send me back to America quietly." Harry stared at her. "And now here we are," William muttered. The Queen cleared her throat. "Let's speak plainly. Dylan, what do you want?" He looked around the table. "I don't want a title. I don't want money. I want to be able to see my son." "No," Harry said instantly. Meghan didn't speak. "I will take every legal route," Dylan said. "He is half mine." The headlines came before the sun. They were faster than truth, sharper than regret, and crueler than any court could ever be. They swarmed like insects, stinging and swarming, burying everything beneath their weight. Royal liar. Meghan's secret cost Harry his son. Duchess of deceit. Palace furious as DNA shocker spirals. Meghan Markle. Mistress, mother, manipulator? And beneath it all, the image that sealed the public's judgment. A still from the confessional interview, Meghan sitting between two men, Harry, looking broken, and Dylan, looking calm. Her expression caught mid-breath, mid-blink, and yet framed like guilt. She stared at the television screen in silence from inside the Sussex estate kitchen in Montecito, hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea she hadn't touched. "They never meant to forgive me," she said at last, voice low, distant. Harry sat across the table, his jaw rigid. He had read every article, every slanted opinion, every dissected facial expression and recontextualized moment. And though the worst of it wasn't even directed at him, it still chipped away at his skin like acid rain. "They want a villain," he said. "You're easier to hate than me, easier to blame." "And Archie?" she asked, eyes flickering up. He hesitated. "He's a question now. To them. There was a long pause. "Is that what he is to you?" she asked. Harry looked up. "No. Never." The silence that followed was so quiet they could hear the faint click of the sprinklers outside kicking on. The world, as always, moved on. But for Meghan, the hour had frozen. The betrayal didn't come from the press. Came from a letter. A single envelope, delivered not by courier, but slipped under their private gate, and signed. Its contents were simple. A printout of private WhatsApp messages. Between Meghan and her former communications assistant. Between Meghan and Dylan. And one message she had sent a week before Archie's birth that read, "If this gets out, I'm finished. I'll deny everything. Harry can never know. I'm already too far in." The page wasn't dated, but it was time-stamped. The moment she saw it, she knew what it meant. Someone in the palace had leaked it. She walked into the sitting room and handed the paper silently to James Rathbone, who had returned to California on personal security duty at Harry's request. He read it once, then again, then looked at her. "Who has access to your old devices?" "Only one person," she said. "She was a friend." "She?" James asked. "Lady Rachel Delamere," Meghan said bitterly. "The Queen's press whisperer. She played the modern feminist to get close. She wanted to make me into the new Diana. And when I wouldn't play the game, she turned." James nodded grimly. "She's on the Privy Council now. Has full access to communications archives. This wasn't leaked by the press. This was fed." "For what?" Meghan asked. "To strip you of what's left," James said. "Reputation, sympathy, legal credibility if Dylan pushes for custody." Harry walked in then, glancing between them. "What's going on?" Meghan handed him the paper. He read it, then again. His hands trembled. "Is it real?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she said. "And you would have denied it all." "I was terrified." Harry dropped the page. "I don't know who you are anymore." Meghan flinched. "Don't say that. You were going to lie to my face." "I didn't," she snapped. "I told the truth eventually." "Eventually might have come too late," he said. James stepped in. "We need to act. Before they do." "They already did," Meghan said. "They've won. They've rewritten the story." "No," James replied. "They've just published their draft. But we can still take back the pen." Back in London, the wheels were turning faster than anyone could control. A closed-door emergency session of senior royals had convened to discuss a redefinition of royal association and honorary status, which in less formal terms meant Meghan Markle was being prepped for erasure. Charles sat at the head of the table, fingers steepled, listening as Lady Delamere presented her report. "The public no longer views her as sympathetic," Rachel said, her tone crisp, her appearance immaculate in a pearl-button blazer. "The general consensus is betrayal, manipulation, and opportunism. We believe the monarchy has an opportunity to reclaim goodwill by exiling her?" Princess and asked dryly. "Officially revoking all patronages," Rachel corrected, "and publicly distancing the institution from any future legal proceedings involving Mr. Hawthorne." William tapped his pen against the table. "That includes Archie?" Rachel hesitated. "It would be cleaner. Legally." Charles looked at her. "You're proposing we disown the child?" "He's not of royal blood," she said calmly. "Not by male lineage. The precedent is clear." "And what about optics?" and said, "You throw out a woman of color and her mixed-race child, again, and expect applause?" Rachel's eyes glinted. "That woman has used her identity as a shield for too long." Silence followed. Then Charles spoke. "Draft the statement. Discreetly." 2 days later, Meghan sat beside Harry on their garden bench. Her phone buzzed. One notification. An alert from the Palace app. The headline made her chest seize. "Sussex patronages formally revoked by royal decree." She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She simply stood up and walked inside. Harry followed her. "Meg, I don't need sympathy," she said. "I wasn't going to give it," he replied. "I was going to ask what you want to do." She turned to him slowly. "I want to go back." To England? He asked. To the palace. Harry stared at her. That's madness. I want to stand in that chamber, face to face with Rachel Delamere, and make her say it to me directly. That I am nothing. That Archie is no one. I want them to look in my eyes when they erase my name. Harry stepped forward. And what if they throw you out? Again? Then they'll do it while I'm still standing, she said. He stared at her for a long time. Then he nodded. I'm going with you. Meghan's return to Buckingham was not announced. Not televised. Not sanctioned. But it wasn't unnoticed. When she stepped through the gates, flanked by Harry and James, the staff went silent. Even the portraits on the walls seemed to shudder. She walked to the council chamber uninvited. But the doors were unlocked. Rachel Delamere was mid-sentence when the doors opened. The entire room turned. And Meghan entered. No crown. No title. No pretense. Just a woman who refused to disappear. I believe you have something of mine, she said coolly. Rachel stood slowly. This is a private meeting. So is the betrayal of a child, Meghan said. And I'm here to make sure you say his name when you cut him out. Rachel didn't blink. Archie is not of royal descent. That is no longer debatable. No, Meghan said. But your cruelty is. The room was silent. You weaponized my fear, she continued. You leaked messages meant for no eyes but mine. You fed the press like wolves, and now you're calling it damage control. You don't want to protect the crown. You want to bury the parts of it that make you uncomfortable. Rachel's face didn't move. Charles leaned forward. What exactly is it you want, Meghan? Nothing, she said. I came to show you that I'm not afraid. That no matter how hard you try, I will not vanish quietly. Then she turned to Harry. Let's go. As they reached the door, Charles spoke again. You will not be allowed back. She turned to him one last time. I was never allowed in. And then she was gone. But in her wake, the air didn't settle. It trembled. Because even those who ruled the world's oldest throne knew. This was far from over. It began in Paris. A mural, 30 feet tall, spray-painted overnight on the side of a building facing the Seine. It showed Meghan Markle holding Archie in one arm, shielding him from a gilded lion with blood on its paws. Her other arm stretched backward, torn and bruised, toward a palace gate closing behind her. Across it, in bold red scrawl, she told the truth. They buried her alive. By noon, the image was everywhere. CNN, BBC, Le Monde, Al Jazeera, The Guardian. Even The Times, usually slow to pick sides, ran it front page with the headline, Royal Reckoning. Has the palace gone too far? The message had landed. Not just in Europe, but across continents. Within 48 hours, something unprecedented occurred. An emergency session of the United Nations Committee on Human Rights requested to review the monarchy's handling of Meghan's removal and Archie's revocation of royal rights under the lens of racial bias and child protection. That same evening, the Canadian Prime Minister tweeted, "Silencing a mother to protect an institution is not tradition. It is tyranny." It wasn't just moral outrage. It became political. By the third day, the Commonwealth began to fracture, quietly but unmistakably. Officials in Barbados and Jamaica raised formal concerns. A minister from New Zealand called for a public inquiry into Britain's treatment of the Sussex family. The Australian Broadcasting Corporation aired a 90-minute investigative documentary titled Bloodlines and Betrayal: The Cost of the Crown. Inside Buckingham Palace, the mood turned from arrogance to alarm. "She's winning," Charles whispered at a crisis meeting. "She's not trying to win," Anne replied bluntly. "She's trying to survive. And you gave her the perfect battlefield." Charles slammed his fist onto the mahogany desk, rattling crystal. "We gave her silence. You gave her exile," and said, "Now she's made a throne out of it." Meanwhile, in California, Meghan's team had gone dark. Literally. Phones were shut off. Press calls were ignored. Cameras were unplugged. The mansion became a bunker of strategy. Inside, gathered around the long oak dining table once meant for Sunday brunches, now sat an elite team. James Rathbone, former MI6. Alessandra Ruiz, a human rights lawyer from Mexico City. Naomi Yates, ex-BBC investigative journalist. And Ayaka Mizuno, a digital strategist who once ran disinformation campaigns in Asia and had now flipped the script. At the head of the table sat Meghan. No makeup, no jewelry, just a laptop, a cup of ginger tea, and a war map of influence pinned to the wall behind her, marked in red pins and sharpest scrawls. "We're not doing damage control," she said. "We're doing revelation." James nodded. "Then we need leverage." Alessandra tapped a folder. "You have it." Inside were sealed depositions, testimonies from former royal staff. Confidential once, no longer. Whispers of threats, emotional blackmail, forced non-disclosure agreements signed under duress. And most damning of all, a sworn statement from a former palace doctor who had been ordered to falsify medical logs during Meghan's first pregnancy. The contents, if leaked, could bring down half the monarchy. Naomi leaned forward. "You want to release this?" "No," Meghan said. "Not yet. I want them to know I have it. Then I want to see what they do." Ayaka raised her phone. "We plant the hint. Quietly. One line. On the right platform." Meghan nodded. 5 minutes later, an anonymous tweet from a well-known civil rights lawyer read, "If the public saw what Meghan endured behind the gates, they'd burn the monarchy to ash. Some documents are ticking." It went viral in 6 minutes. The palace phones began to ring in 7. Back in London, chaos metastasized. Lady Rachel Delamere received a coded message through secure palace lines. "Backtrack. We're bleeding. Damage above threshold." She stared at the report on her desk. Her own approval ratings had cratered since the leak of Meghan's texts. Someone, no one knew who, had uploaded a voice memo of Rachel referring to Archie as the asterisk child. It was heard over 12 million times. She was radioactive now, and Charles knew it. He summoned her to Windsor. "You've made yourself the face of cruelty," he said. "I've done what you never had the spine to," she replied. "I should have removed you the moment you chose war," Charles whispered. "You can't afford to," Rachel said, "unless you want me telling the press how far back you knew about Dylan." He stared at her for a long time, and then said, "Get out." It was the last time she ever set foot in a royal residence. But the damage was done. In Montecito, Meghan received a call from someone she hadn't spoken to in nearly 4 years. The voice on the other end was low. Familiar. American. "I didn't want to call," Serena said. "But I saw what they did. And if you need me, I'll stand next to you." Meghan closed her eyes. "You really want to step into this? I watched you be turned into a monster," Serena said. "It ends now." 3 days later, Oprah tweeted a photo. Meghan, Serena, Michelle Obama, seated together. No caption. No explanation. The internet imploded. It wasn't just support. It was alliance. The palace finally issued a statement. One line. "The Sussex matter is closed. The Crown will not comment further." But silence was no longer power. It was confession. At night, Meghan sat on the floor of Archie's room, brushing his hair as he slept, the soft glow of a nightlight painting the walls in gold. Harry stood at the doorway, arms folded. "You're not the same woman I married," he said softly. She turned, barely smiling. "No, I've bled too much since then." He walked over, knelt beside her. "But I think I love this version even more." She looked at him. "Even after everything?" "Especially after everything." She exhaled. "They will never forgive me." "They already lost the right to judge you," he whispered. Outside, in the dark, another mural was being painted. In New York, in Seoul, in Cape Town, each one different. But in every one, the message was the same. You can exile a woman, but not her truth. The envelope came wrapped in plain brown paper. No seal, no crest, no note. It arrived in a weathered manila package dropped off at the front gate of the Montecito estate by an unknown courier who vanished before the security cameras could catch his face. Meghan opened it in the study alone. The house was quiet. Harry had taken Archie for a hike along the coast to escape the noise of the world. Inside the envelope, a single flash drive, labeled in elegant cursive handwriting. For when silence becomes betrayal. She plugged it into the secure laptop James had modified with military encryption. A folder appeared. One file. Windsor Recording Private Archive. Do not destroy. She pressed play. The voice that came through the speakers made her drop the glass in her hand. Old, tired, but unmistakable. Queen Elizabeth. This recording is to be stored in the private vault until such time as the events I fear begin to unfold. If you are hearing this, then I did not stop it. Meghan's heart began to race. The Queen's voice was calm, almost eerily measured. I have ruled longer than any woman in our history. I have witnessed wars, betrayals, marriages built for cameras, and children lost to power. But nothing has pierced me more deeply than watching this institution turn cold toward one of our own. There was a pause. And then, yes, I mean Meghan. And yes, I know about the child. Meghan's hands began to shake. I was told of the uncertainty months before his birth. Whispered concerns. Paternity rumors. But what appalled me most was not the potential truth. It was the eagerness of those around me to punish her regardless of that truth. The Queen inhaled sharply. There was talk of expelling her, of quietly revoking titles, of sealing records that may implicate those within our own walls. I ordered them to stop. I demanded protection for the child. And I was ignored. The audio clicked. Silence. Then a second voice appeared. A male voice. Hesitant. Familiar. William. But if the child isn't Harry's, how can we? He will still be royal, the Queen said, because he was born of love, and because we are not gods. We do not decide whose blood deserves to be sacred. Meghan covered her mouth. I fear what Charles will do, the Queen said, and what Delamere already has. If this family dares to repeat the sins of Diana's time, they will not only lose the public, but their soul. The audio ended. Silence filled the room like floodwater. James entered the study moments later. He found Meghan frozen, tears sliding silently down her face. Who sent it? He asked softly. She turned the screen toward him. James listened, then stared at the flash drive like it was radioactive. Where did this come from? He asked. No name, she whispered, but the handwriting on the label. She opened a drawer, pulled out an old letter from years ago. She held them side by side. Identical loops. Identical slants. The handwriting belonged to Princess Anne. Back in London, Princess Anne stood at the edge of the royal stables. Her boots caked with mud. Her hands clenched inside riding gloves. She had not spoken to Charles in 2 weeks. Not since Meghan walked into that chamber and looked all of them in the eye. Charles approached her now, slow, cautious. You leaked it, he said. Not a question. And didn't look at him. She was never the threat, she said. It was always us. You've destroyed what little unity we had left. No, she said. You did that when you let Rachel weaponize her. When you tried to exile a child. Charles's face hardened. He is not of our line. Neither was the first Plantagenet, and snapped. But history remembers blood far less than it remembers cruelty. He stepped closer. You've broken protocol. That audio was from Her Majesty's most private archive. She left it to be heard, and said, she feared what you would become. His eyes burned. You've betrayed me. No, she said, finally turning to him. I've betrayed this. The machine. The monster we keep feeding while calling it duty. I'm done. You would burn the crown? I would rather see it honest than polished. He stepped back. She mounted her horse. You never had her strength, she said. Only her shadow. And she rode off. That night, in Montecito, Meghan sat beside Harry, the flash drive still in her palm. She tried to protect me, Meghan whispered. She did, Harry said. And now it's our turn to finish what she started. He took her hand. We release it. Are you sure? She asked. It'll be war. We're already at war, he said. But now we have the Queen's voice. When the audio dropped online, it detonated across the world. A monarch confessing she knew the child might not be Harry's. That she ordered protection. That she was defied. The headlines spun like knives. The Queen knew. Elizabeth's last stand for Meghan. Princess and defies the crown. But the people, they changed. The tide turned. Suddenly, Meghan wasn't the liar. She was the silenced. And the monarchy was the machine. Petitions flooded Parliament. Protests ignited outside Buckingham. A letter from 14 members of the House of Commons was drafted to initiate a parliamentary inquiry. And in Jamaica, a national referendum was formally scheduled. Meghan watched it all unfold with quiet awe. Then she turned to Harry. "Do you think she knew this would happen?" "She didn't hope for survival," Harry said. "She hoped for change." They sat together in silence. Outside, the California air was warm, clear, still. But across the ocean, something ancient began to crack. And for the first time in centuries, the monarchy blinked. The key was hidden behind the third-floor portrait of Queen Victoria at Althorpe House. It had always been there, taped in place, behind a slit in the canvas no one but Diana herself had ever known existed. It was her version of insurance, one that Charles had spent years pretending didn't exist, and one William had, according to palace files, tried to find 4 times after their mother's death. But it was Harry who found it, not because he was looking, but because he had run out of places to hide. He had returned to the Spencer estate alone. A rare trip, quiet, almost sacred. The press thought he was in Geneva for meetings, not standing in his mother's childhood home with his hands trembling over a strip of decaying masking tape, peeling it back with a reverence usually reserved for holy relics. The key was cold. It fit into a single lock behind a loose brick in Diana's old writing room, still preserved the way she'd left it. Soft pillows, worn books, a kettle on the antique sideboard. Inside the safe, a dusty black case, unlabeled, lined with red velvet. Inside that case, a tape recorder, Sony, 1989 model, a stack of old high-8 tapes, to be exact, each labeled only with the letter D and a number. D1, D2, D3, D4. Harry carried them with both hands, like glass. The first tape started with laughter. It shocked him. He hadn't heard her voice in years. Not like this, unfiltered, happy. It was like a ghost suddenly sitting beside him on the couch. "Okay, let's get this on the record, shall we?" she said playfully. Then she sighed. "Today is July 14th. Charles is in Scotland. The boys are with the nanny. And I'm going to say things no one ever wants me to say, in case they succeed in silencing me one day." Harry froze. He recognized the sound of the old lamp behind her, the ticking clock. Then came the next words. "They made me sign a statement," Diana said, "to protect the crown. But what they were really protecting were the lies." The room went quiet. Harry's pulse thundered in his ears. "I know Charles had Camilla the entire time. I know it, and the world knows it, even if they pretend not to. But there's something more. Something I haven't said out loud." A long pause. "I don't know if Harry is his." Harry's hands shot to his mouth. The world spun. "I had a moment," Diana continued. "A brief moment. With someone else. He wasn't royal. He wasn't approved. But he was kind. And for 1 week, I let myself feel like a person, not a pawn." Harry stumbled back from the table. No. He hit pause, then rewind, then played it again. "I don't know if Harry is his." His chest felt tight, his vision tunneled. And then, almost as if she sensed it from beyond the grave, Diana spoke again, her voice cracking. "But I loved Harry. Every inch of him. No matter what his blood says. He was the only one who looked at me like I was real. Not royal. Not broken. Just mum." Tears streamed down his face. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "But I don't regret him. I'd die before letting them take him from me." Harry shut the tape off. His body collapsed into the armchair, shaking. By the time he returned to Montecito, the sun had set. He didn't speak during the flight, didn't respond to James, didn't even open his phone. He walked into the house. Meghan was waiting. One look at his face, and she knew. "You found something," she said softly. He nodded, and then he handed her the tape. She listened, and gasped. "Harry!" He didn't speak. "I'm so sorry." He shook his head. "I don't even know who I am anymore." "Yes, you do," she said, putting a hand on his chest. "You're Archie's father. You're a son. You're a man who survived every lie they told." "I'm a question mark in my own bloodline," he whispered. "No," she said. "You're the proof that love makes blood irrelevant." He looked at her, eyes full of history and pain. "I have to know," he said. "For sure." She nodded. And that night, Harry sent off his own DNA. Privately, not through the palace, not through Geneva, but to a third-party geneticist in Portugal who specialized in ancestral triangulation. Results would come in 1 week. But what came first was worse. The tapes leaked. Not by Harry. Not by Meghan. Someone at the Spencer estate had bugged the safe room. Perhaps years ago. Perhaps recently. It didn't matter. The press had it. And the headlines were the stuff of nightmares. Was Harry ever a Windsor? Diana's secret tapes confirmed doubt. The bloodline breaks. It wasn't just about Meghan anymore. Harry became the headline. Inside Buckingham Palace, chaos ignited. William threw a glass across the council chamber wall. "She never meant for this to be heard," he yelled. "This was private." Charles was silent, red-faced, and stared at him with something close to vindication. "So now we ask the question you tried to bury," she said. Charles didn't reply, because he couldn't. He had known. Diana had told him in 1991, and he had ignored it, buried it, raised Harry because the image demanded it. Now the world demanded answers, and none of them were clean. Meghan and Harry received the call on a Friday. Portugal. A soft-spoken woman with an accent that danced between Lisbon and London. "We completed the analysis," she said. "We compared your sequence to the known Windsor line. Your paternal markers do not align." Silence. Harry stood still, like a statue inside himself. "You are not a biological match to Prince Charles." Meghan's hand found his. "And your closest ancestral link, based on the sequences from public records and archival scans, matches a man named Major James Hewitt." Meghan's eyes widened. Harry whispered, "The riding instructor." "Yes," the woman said. "Maternal confirmation is absolute. Your mother is Diana. But your father is not Charles." Silence. "You have our full report. It's encrypted. Call if you need clarification." The line went dead. Meghan stood up. Harry didn't. He just stared at the table, motionless. "They'll call me a bastard," he said. "You're a man," she replied. "And you're free now." He looked at her. "From what?" "From pretending you ever belonged in their system." He stood, walked to the mirror, and for the first time in his life he saw himself. Just Harry. And for the first time, he didn't look lost. The letter was handwritten, not typed, not drafted by aides, not reviewed by lawyers, just ink and trembling fingers. Harry signed it at 3:02 a.m., alone in the Montecito study, beneath a framed photo of his mother holding him as a baby, eyes alive with something that now felt like prophecy. He sealed the envelope with red wax. It was addressed to one man, King Charles III. It read only 10 lines. "I was never yours. Not in name, not in truth. But I tried to be your son, and I tried harder to be your soldier. I served, I smiled, I stood where I was told, until I couldn't breathe. You could have been the father. Instead, you were the mask. I have no titles now, no crown, no blood to claim. Only a child who believes I hung the moon, and a woman who never let go of my hand even when I didn't know who I was. So this is the last time I'll write to you as your son. From here on, I'll simply be Harry. A man, a father, a free one. Goodbye." The public found out 3 days later. No press conference. No official statement. Just a sudden update on the royal family's website. With mutual respect and in accordance with personal decisions, Prince Harry will no longer be referred to by royal titles in official capacity. He and his family are no longer recognized within the line of succession. The matter is concluded. But the world didn't see it as concluded. They saw it as historic. The headlines blazed in real time. Prince Harry resigns from royal identity after paternity confirmed false. Legacy or lie. The son who wasn't, and the father he became. The last goodbye. Harry shatters royal line, forever. Palace insiders said Charles didn't speak for a day and a half after receiving the letter. He simply stared at the desk in his Windsor office, the letter trembling in his hands, and asked one thing over and over. What did I raise then? No one could answer, because the truth was, he hadn't raised a prince. He had raised a man brave enough to leave everything behind. Meghan sat across from Harry on their back patio. She had asked him once, years ago, what he would do if the crown disappeared. Now she didn't have to ask. She just watched him. Quiet, still, peaceful. I didn't think it would feel like this, he said finally. Like what? Relief, he said. Like something heavy is no longer chained to my ribs. She smiled softly. You chose your truth. I chose Archie's, he said. I chose the truth he deserves. They sat in silence for a moment longer. Then Meghan took out her phone. We've been asked to appear at a UN summit. Women's rights, family identity, freedom from institutional abuse. Harry raised a brow. They want both of us? They want us as who we are now, she said. Not who we were. He nodded. Let's go. But not as symbols. As survivors. She smiled. As parents. Back in London, something strange began to happen. People gathered outside the gates of Buckingham. Not in protest. Not in support. In silence. Holding white roses. They came without signs. Without chants. Without rage. Just a single flower, placed one by one along the wrought iron fence. The Queen's portrait was lit from within. And beneath it, someone had placed a handwritten note. She tried to protect the one they never wanted. It went viral. Within days, thousands more flowers appeared. Diana's portrait was raised next to Elizabeth's. Two women who died carrying secrets not meant to survive them.